Hello and welcome back to the Card Pool. I'm your host, Stu.
And I'm Kyle.
And today we are finishing up our set of Exodus. We're looking at the money cards this time.
Yes, we are. And there's some pretty good ones here, too. We got some high values. Might be one of the higher ones I've ever seen, honestly.
Yeah. So without building any more anticipation, because it's already there simmering, we'll jump right in on the tippy top of the most expensive cards that we found. So at number 1 here, I'll start it off for us. We have a card called City of Traitors. At the time we grabbed it, this card was going for about $146 for a land. And if you play a land, you have to sacrifice this card. However, you can go ahead and tap this card to create 2 colorless mana to your mana pool. This is a card that might seem a little counterintuitive at first because you have to go ahead and you have to sacrifice this card if you play a land. But you can go ahead and use this card super early or at any point in the game to give you a quick jump. It's almost like a land ritual, if you want to think of it that way. You pay a little bit, you go ahead and get this. And also, before you play the land, you tap this card. So you still get the net of mana that you want. So being able to have 3 mana on turn 2, pretty nice.
Yeah, so, I mean, this is right up there with something like Ancient Tomb. I mean, is paying 2 life for 2 mana a shot worth it? Probably yes. Is losing a land potentially worth it for, more than 1 mana a shot? Maybe. It probably is. I partially don't understand why this card is so expensive. Maybe it's just because no reprints, but it is pretty decent. It doesn't count lands you ramp into, which is nice. So when a land comes into play, it doesn't get sacrificed. When you play a land, it gets sacrificed. So it kind of gets around things in that respect, which makes it a little bit better. And once again, it's a Temple of the False God with no conceivable drawbacks, really, when it compared to that one. So it could be really useful in decks, especially that like to sacrifice lands, like Titania or the Gitrog monster or something like that.
Yeah, you can go ahead, you can recur it, and we've seen tons of things like Crucible of Worlds, ramming up Excavators, stuff like that to go ahead and make it so that you can get this card back into play where there's no true downside. But this is also a solid legacy piece. Like, you can go ahead, you play this on turn 1, and you go ahead and you flood the field out with, mana rocks and stuff like that. And then, sure, yeah, you'll lose it, but you've gotten that mana amount that you need, and you can, if you need to, run another one of these in Legacy and stuff like that. So it's kind of a little bit odd for us in Commander, but it could be very valid in a CEDH kind of format as well.
Yeah, maybe that's it. I don't know. I don't really pay attention to things outside of Modern, for example. But hey, it could be. I think going on to our next one, though, this is one that everybody will recognize. Number 2 here on our money card list for $80 a copy is Survival of the Fittest. Yes, the fear of Magic players everywhere. It costs 2 mana, and it's a green enchantment, 1 and the generic and 1 green. And it gives you the ability to just tap 1 green anytime, any place, discard a creature, search your deck for any creature, and put it into your hand. Very simple effect, but very, very powerful, as anybody who has played against or with this card will attest. This should be, I think, more expensive than the other one, and it's actually come down a slight bit in value recently. It used to be over 100. So there you go.
No, it's usually been around $50. It's gone up to about 60 since it's kind of its initial plummet from Grace, but it's
still absolutely incredible. For 1 mana, getting any creature from your deck is great. Discarding a creature can be a cost that sometimes you may not be able to meet. But as long as you have 1 creature, you can just keep chaining it over and over again into more creatures cycling through your deck. And that's kind of the point. You want to use this card to set up your graveyard, to put something big into your hand, probably bring everything back in the process. That's how I've used it in the past. I mean, and aside from that, it's just a great utility piece to find whatever creature you need at any given situation.
If you're ever looking for a budget option of this, Fauna Shaman it should pretty much read Magus of the Fittest or something like that. This is, and also you gotta love the whole flair on this. This is Darwin at its finest right there. It's pretty much, it just turns any creature card that's no longer relevant to you into something that's useful. Being able to kind of get a better worldly tutor continuously over and over again is great. Very, very great. And this is great for filling up the grave. So dredge with green, it's so powerful for that. And anything else that it is combined with, black loves this card from green like the most. Yeah. This is like its ideal one to go with. The only thing that matters is you just have to have green mana and enough to pump into it to just fill out your deck.
This is one of the great cards in Magic history. Really, it is. It's just it's very well known and feared and powerful for a very good reason.
And it's been reprinted as a Judge promo. Other than that, it's only OG to this set, which is also part of why the price is so high. And if it did get reprinted, it'd probably drop down, but quickly rebound just because so many decks need this card. It's just so powerful.
Yeah. Definitely a step up from even the closest comparison. But moving on, let's get to a card that, in spite of maybe not being as good as that, is actually banned in Commander. Number 3, Recurring Nightmare. This is another enchantment, costs 2 generic and 1 black. You sacrifice a creature and return Recurring Nightmare to its owner's hand from the battlefield, and you put a creature from your graveyard into play. You can only use this ability anytime you can cast a sorcery. As I said, this card is banned in Commander for a very good reason. I mean, you may look at something like Survival of the Fittest and be like, well, that's really good. How come that isn't banned in Commander? But this is kind of a whole different level of ridiculous, because you could potentially, paying 3 every turn to get any creature from your graveyard back into play. At the very worst, it's paying 3 to flicker a creature. And if we've seen anything, we know that in black is not broken at all. Great Merchant.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Well, also the point is like, well, so this card's around like $17, but you can go ahead and make it so like, all right, you play this, you sacrifice a creature, you bring one back from the grave. Then you go ahead and you bring back the creature you just sacrificed by swapping them out. So it inherently goes in its own cycle. It recycles them back and forth. So if you go ahead and keep winding this clock, you have a doomsday device there, depending on what creatures you want to go ahead and use this with. It's very easy to have go crazy. And the fact that it's like, play this as a sorcery, big deal. You're going to win that turn anyway. Like,
yeah,
it's going to be
just, Constellation loves this card now because it's an enchantment, and even outside of that, this is just something that is way too good for the format. So I totally understand why this is banned, and no, should it ever come back? No, it's too good.
And it's so easy, like turn 1, play Entomb, put like, I don't know, the Black Traitor in the grave or something like that, right? Then turn 2, bring out a Soul Ring, play a Swamp, bring this into play. Okay, then play whatever creature, and now you got the board easily locked down because the Praetor's going to keep the stuff out, and you just keep going and having a great day. So, you can go on and on about this card, but since it's not in Commander, we don't really care about it. So we're going to go on to our next one, which is going to be number 4, and it's called Mind Over Matter. Now, this is a $16 card about there for an enchantment. Enchantments in the setup. I'll tell you what, it costs, it's a lot of blue. That's 6, right? 2 generic, 4 blue. You choose and discard a card, tap or untap, target artifact, creature, or land. So if this sounds as broken as it is, that is right. It is very easy to break. You can go ahead, make infinite mana, get so many different kind of triggers on creatures that you're trying to go off with, and even just abuse a land that puts cards into your hand or creates so much mana. The turn this comes into play, you could go ahead and pretty much win depending on what your resources are.
Oh, yeah. The bottom line is this wins the game with, like, look at Azami, Lady of Scrolls from Kamigawa. Tap a wizard, draw a card. Discard a card, untap a wizard. And, so on and so on and so on. You could just basically draw your entire deck just from playing this one card. This is, again, like Survival of the Fittest, like Recurring Nightmare, obviously a broken card. And basically, you win the game if this comes down, and if you don't, you're not playing it right.
Well, all right. You could use it very gentleman-like, I'll say, or very, very casually. There's no problem in using this card casually. However, you're not going to be doing that for very long once you realize how this interacts with another card and another card. So the next thing you know, you've just created this monster of a deck without even trying to.
Yeah, no, this is really the only thing that holds this back from being just oppressively broken is the fact that it costs 6 and like 4 of it blue. That means it's not really going to see a whole lot of play outside mono blue decks.
I mean, if you want to throw it in another deck, just get your mana curve down right, and you'll be all right, maybe. But yeah, that 4 blue really disincentivizes you. But moving on to number 5 here. If it's a card that made it so you hated the other one, well, that name is sticking to it. It's called Hatred.
Yes.
Kyle, take it away. It's a $15.
All right, well, this one, this is an instant, and it costs 5 mana, 3 generic, 2 black, and you just pay X life. Target creature gets +X/+O until end of turn. So there seems to be like a running theme in this set, especially in these money cards, of just cards that if you play them, you probably win. And again, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Oh, paying any amount of life you want, that's not potentially broken at all. So this is, I mean, like I said, converting life into anything is powerful, especially in Commander where we have so much life. And the basic function of this card is to, on your commander, or maybe on an infect creature or a trample creature or something, enable one-shot kills out of nowhere, and pretty early in the game, too.
Yeah, it's good for just a win con for old-fashioned commander damage. That alone, with a 1 card right there, is great. How hard is it to go ahead and do 21 damage with a creature that already has a stat that's not 0 as a base attack? Okay, yeah. How much life do you have? 40. Yeah, sure. I have no problem going ahead and doing that. Also, Black has some form of ways of like making people's life drop down easy, like Soren Markov. Hey, your life's 10. Okay, I don't have to take much to get you out of the game at this point. And there's other black creatures out there make target players' life 10. They just like doing that for some reason. So being able to just go ahead and make it so like, hey, 5 mana, kill a player. Yeah, it's a strong card.
Yeah, or I mean, you could just be really dirty with it. You don't even have to attack. You could just pay 5, say, I'm going to pay like 39 life, and then play Disciple of Bolas. I'm going to gain 39 life and draw 39 cards. You're welcome.
Yeah, works too. Yeah, 100%.
That's again, pretty straightforward. I understand why this card is a money card. Let's move on.
All right, so number 6, we're looking at a card called Sphere of Resistance. It's around $13. It's an artifact that costs 2 generic, and it reads all spells cost an additional 1 to play. So we're tipping the scales from going from, hey, it's easy to win, to now it's harder to win. And thank goodness, because Wizards, if there was any more of these instant win cards in here, yeah, so at least they're realizing they're doing something here. This is a great card to slow down the tempo of play. If you've ever played against a Grand Arbiter, Augustine the Fourth, where it just makes stuff cost more, every time they come out, people groan.
It's so miserable. I hate these taxing cards.
Yeah, everyone wants to have discounts, not additional costs. So this is a great way to slow down aggro players if that's ever a problem in your play group. If they're just coming at you willy-nilly because stuff just costs too cheap, well, just raise the cost on them. If you're a slower kind of green deck, you'll have those resources to go ahead and not have this hurt you as much. And this can go into any deck. It's an artifact. It has its plays, but it also has its collective groans.
Yeah, well, it's a pretty nice addition to any stacks type deck. You have to build around it and play around it in order to be successful, but that shouldn't really be a problem considering you're building the deck with this in it. And being an artifact gives it an additional, like, huge reach and synergy with a number of other cards. Like, I mean, Static Orb, Winter Orb, and Snaring Bridge, all of them kind of fall under this same kind of umbrella. And like I said, I hate playing against these cards. It's so terrible.
I like it. Fine. It's like, all right, I'll just now instead of winning on turn 4, it's turn 6.
Well, maybe, but still, pretty nice card. Again.
So moving on to number 7 here, Kyle, you take this. This is a card you've definitely used.
Yes, it is. Number 7 here is Coat of Arms, another easily recognizable card for a lot of people. It's an artifact that costs 5 mana to play, and each creature in play gets +1/+1 for each other creature in play of the same type. So, like we said, pretty recognizable card. This is like the original tribal anthem, famous ingredient of tribal decks anywhere. However, this being an older card, you have to be a little bit careful because this gives a universal boost to the table. So if you're playing against somebody with a high concentration of tribal cards of their own, it could potentially give them an unwanted boost. However, more often than not, the net result of this is going to be your creatures are just insanely big and everybody else is scared. So that's mainly what's going to happen.
Yeah, in the off chance you're playing against somebody who's using a lot of changelings, they'll probably be the one to get the advantage with this, but you should be the one grabbing all the value. And the great thing for this is, and I'm so glad Wizards did this is in all colors. You can go ahead and use this because every color has its own tribe. So being able to go ahead and give Eldrazi a big boost, nobody wants that to happen, but you can make that happen. Or humans or clerics or whatever kind of commander comes out in the future, this is a great card to go ahead and make those tribal builds a lot more aggressive. And yeah, it's not much more to say about it than that.
No, these power cards are pretty straightforward, but they're good at what they do.
So at number 8, we're looking at a card here called Equilibrium. And I am amazed I said that right as well. It costs $8 for another enchantment that costs 3 mana, 1 generic and double blue. Whenever you successfully cast a creature spell, you may pay 1 generic. And if you do, return target creature to its owner's hand. So this is something that is blue at its core, because blue's all about returning stuff to people's hands. I'm not going to kill it. I'll just say, just bring that dish back to the kitchen and bring it back to me later. I'm not ready for it yet. And in addition, you're going ahead, it's after you casted something. So what do blue typically cast? Counter spells. I'm going to counter something, pay 1 more, get rid of your creature. I'm going to go ahead, bounce stuff back, and then do this or do that. Like, it combos out so easily, especially for just having 1 more mana. I kind of wish it was 1 blue you had to pay for it, because it would make it less easy to get that effect off. But it's still a very great card.
Yeah, well, see, this is honestly, like, I'm shocked that I don't see this card as much as I think it as good as it is. Attacking the ability for 1 additional mana to bounce onto any creature seems, in principle, amazing. However, the only strike against it is that for it to be good, you obviously have to play a lot of creatures. You're in blue, you don't always do that. So I could see that potentially being a point of contention. However, I usually like to play a lot of wizards when I'm in blue. Wizard tribal is pretty solid. You play a lot of creatures there. This is a nice addition to maybe a wizard tribal deck, for example.
Or Merfolk.
You just add bouncing a creature onto everything. However, you can also, of course, combo with yourself. You play something like a Venser, for example, to bounce or counter something. The next time you play a creature, you can just pay an additional 1 to put Venser back in your hand and reuse him at another point.
Yeah, it's almost like, which one would you rather? Crystal Shard or this? Crystal Shard doesn't have to go on to something else as a cast and can go off on its own, but it's a one-time use. It's an artifact. But, and if you are targeting your own permanent settings, if you're trying to enable more ETBs, you can go ahead and make it so that this is an easy way to get that effect. I mean, if you're using Brago and you can't attack anymore, you're dead in the water. So having this as a backup plan in a deck like that isn't a bad idea. So, is this a good card? 100%, without a doubt. But would you use it over Crystal Shards? That's what I want to know. So we'll do another little poll up in one of the corners. I don't know where it is because I'm in a little box right now. So let us know. Would you rather this or Crystal Shards?
Yeah,
but
interesting.
Moving on. Yeah, moving on to number 9, Kyle. What do you got?
All right. Oh, we've got Spike Weaver here in number 9, $7 for this card. And again, it is a 4-mana green creature, 2 colorless and 2 green for a spike, one of those weird little slug type things. It's a 0/0, but it comes into play with 3 +1/+1 counters on it, so it's a 3/3, not bad. So it has 2 abilities. You can either tap 2, remove a counter from it to put a counter on a target creature, which is the standard ability that most spikes have. Also, you could tap 1 to take a counter off him and fog. Creatures deal no combat damage this turn. So the reason why this card, I think, is a money card here is because, I mean, not put too fine a point on it, it's really good. I mean, creatures not being able to do combat damage, the fog ability, has a whole lot of upside, both offensive and defensive. And it's a fog in most decks that can be reused. It's a creature. It's a lot easier to put back into play than maybe an instant or sorcery. And in a deck that abuses +1/+1 counters, this just continues to get out of hand very quickly, not only by increasing the amount of times you can use its ability, but also by giving its counters potentially to other creatures and enabling synergies there. This is, again, just a really all-around great card, and in a deck that can proliferate counters, you can pretty much fog indefinitely.
Yeah, actually, the reason why this card ended up going up was Atraxa. People quickly put 1 and 1 together, and they're like, as long as Atraxa's out, and as long as I have Spike Weaver, I'm not getting hit. And that lockdown right there is very, very powerful, and it doesn't take too much to enable that. And also, this is me, I didn't realize that's a slug. With all the branches and stuff, I thought it was a spider, especially with the web out there. Jason, pull up the image real fast. I always thought it was like a spider over an actual slug. So when someone's like Spike...
Yeah, it does kind of look like a spider. It's got like a spider's head, but then a slug's body. It's weird.
I thought the limbs were the limbs of the tree. But either way, I'll digress on that one. This is a card that's only gotten better with time. And the more we keep touching on proliferating and counters and different themes, this is another card, until it gets reprinted, it's just going to keep going up and being versatile for what it does.
Oh, yeah.
But moving on to our final card in the money set of Exodus. This is a card called Erratic Portal. It costs $6 and 4 generic mana to cast this artifact. For 1 mana and tapping it, you can return target creature to its owner's hand unless its controller pays 1. So this is a solid piece of control. It makes it so that your opponent can't go ahead and tap out. It's almost like they can't cast something if they wanted to for the risk of losing it. Hey, I go ahead, I bring this piece out, I'm going to attack you next turn. Well, no, since I went ahead and used all my mana, that's just going to go back to my hand and set me back another turn. So it's kind of like the conflict you see with having a crystal shard out. People are blatantly seeing the problem in front of them and have to play around it, which gives you an advantage right there. This is an artifact. It can go into any deck. It's a very powerful card for what it can do.
Yeah, this is the original version. So we were talking about Crystal Shard in comparison with like Equilibrium. This one does the exact same thing, but costs a little bit more to use potentially. So is it as good as Equilibrium or Crystal Shard? Probably not, technically speaking, but it is another nice option to have access to. And like with both of those cards, a lot of the primary value is not necessarily in getting rid of other people's creatures, but in reusing your own.
Well, also being able to reuse your own and threaten them like that. If you have a creature out that you're like, I'm going to bounce it, but I'll save mana up just in case there is a problem, I'll go ahead and use this as both offensive and defensive. And that's the true value of a card like this right here.
Yeah.
But that is going to conclude our last part of Exodus. So we're going to be moving on to a different set for in the future. But until then, be sure to check out all of our social media. You can reach us on many different platforms. We got a subreddit, Kicking It Live, so you can check us out there. Tapped Out, Facebook, Twitter, all at the handle The Card Pool.
Indeed, and you can also check us out because on TCG Player, as we indicate below here, we are now sponsored, which you tell us about it, Stu.
So pretty much in the description down below, you'll find a link that'll send you to TCG Player's site, and you'll be like, okay, what happened? Pretty much if you go ahead and you check out, after you clicked on this link, it lets TCG Player know that, hey, we are something that you like. And we are also something that TCG Player should take note of. So they go ahead and they help support our channel, which can go ahead and make it so we have more content in the future. So by doing that, you're helping support the channel in a very, very good way.
Yes, and we appreciate it. So please go to TCG Player, buy some cards there, support them, support us, and like us, subscribe, and follow us wherever you can. We always appreciate that.
But until then, I'm Stu.
I'm Kyle.
And we'll see you next time. At
the card pool.
You stop talking.
At the card pool. We're at the card pool.
We're at the card pool. That was your fault.
Oh, I don't know.